I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of 2/3/2026. John, Anthony, all those in favor? Okay, that's everyone. Dr. Farrelly?
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's good to see all of you, especially our Sanapog superstars that are in the room. Thank you again for joining us tonight. We have 4 comprehensive, informative presentations scheduled for tonight. As such, I will defer and pivot to Ms. Goebel to give her statements, and then we will jump right into our presentations.
Good evening, everyone. This week, my report is on South Bay Elementary School. I visited South Bay on January 29th, and I got the chance to sit in on their student council meeting run by Mrs. Russo. The student council of the 5th grade students was searching for quotes about kindness to read on the announcements in preparation for their Kindness Week, taking place this week, February 9th to 13th. In addition, the student council sent out thoughtful ideas of ways to spread kindness through the school to help promote the Week of Kindness. These crafts include thank you notes to teachers or staff members, rock templates with inspirational quotes to post around the school, and a kindness chain where each student wrote a positive message on their own link, which got stapled in a chain to be displayed in the school. The members of the student council were overjoyed to get the week started and spread kindness through their school.
Awesome. I think the high school has plans for PS I Love You coming up, too. Always love walking around and seeing all the messages and the hearts on the clockers. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, I would like to invite Mrs. Carreri to come up to one of the microphones and, of course, bring with her her little learning ambassadors to present to our Board of Education.
I told them there was going to be 9, so they all walked in and said, they were, not happy with my number.
We are a friendly bunch.
Yes, come on. Don't be scared. All stand up. You're going to line up over here. This way.
You just got to click those microphones on.
Just touch and they click on.
There we go.
Can you
Perfect.
click this one on?
So first, let me just say, I may be the principal of Sanapog, but these truly are the leaders of Sanapog Elementary that you're going to see here tonight. We have something called a buddy program that we run through recess. So this is really a brainchild that we just started this year that branched off from that buddy program. It's usually done during recess, and it's more about playing. And these students really came to us at our SQT meeting and wanted to expand it and do more than just play. They wanted to make crafts, spend time, read books with some of our kindergartners. So I'm going to get started and introduce some of them, and they have a little bit to say about what they've been doing. They came up with the name, Little Learning Ambassadors. We call it LLA for short.
Okay.
Sanapog, whenever we meet. And also, too, we have one of our kindergartners here from our 812 program that we're super
Yes.
excited that enjoys the program as well. So he's here to show you a craft that we are working on.
Fifth graders lead.
Connor, let me introduce everybody first. Oh, yes. Okay, I want to make sure you all get your due. This is your big time here. So I want to make sure you all get your due. So some of our 5th graders, Miss Mia de Blasio,
Mia.
Mr. Dylan Contreras, Ariana Punai, Olivia Cord, Connor Kniff, Chelsea Bennett, and our little kindergartner, Luca Crandall.
Hi, Luca.
I also want to introduce Miss C, who is our teacher in the 812 program. And this is Miss Sorrell, who is our behaviorist, who worked with our 5th graders to make sure that they were trained and properly ready to really go in there and do things with the little ones. Okay? All right, Connor.
Fifth grade leaders plus kindergarten buddies. Read together, create crafts, help and mentor, build friendships.
Little Learning Ambassadors is a program where we, as 5th graders, get to visit kindergarten classrooms once a month. We read with the students, help them with activities and crafts, and act as positive role models. It gives us a chance to be leaders and helps the younger students feel more comfortable and excited about learning.
Why it matters. Builds leadership, teaches responsibility, supports younger students, strengthens our school community.
This program is important because it helps grow as leaders. We learn how to be patient, responsible, and supportive. The kindergarten students get extra help with reading and feel proud of having a big kid buddy. It brings our whole school together and it makes everyone feel connected.
Leader training. Before visiting kindergarten, we learned how to be patient, show kindness, help younger students learn, and be positive role models.
Before we started working with our kindergarten buddies, we participated in a training to help us prepare. We learned how to be patient, how to show kindness, and how to support younger students in a positive way. The training helped us understand that being a leader means setting a good example and making sure everyone feels safe, included, and supported.
What we love most. We love making new friends, helping others learn, seeing our buddies smile, and being role models.
Our favorite part is building relationships with our buddies. We love seeing their excitement when we come to visit. It feels good knowing we're helping them grow and learn. Little Learning Ambassadors has made us more confident and proud to represent our school. Thank you for supporting this program.
And then Luca here, Luca, you want to show your craft? One of the crafts that we made together when they came in.
We made a positive affirmation jar. Can I see? You want to go show? Go ahead. Let me see. Come here. I love it. That's awesome. Can you show my friends over here? I am strong, I am loved, and I am brave. I love it. Go ahead, Dr. Neville wants to see it over there, too. I am so proud of all of you. I mean, can everyone give our ambassadors a huge round of applause here? Definitely, true leaders in your building.
Yes, they really
Absolutely,
are.
Ms. Carrari.
And really just their brainchild. I mean it. You know, this really all came from them as a branch off, so we have just started it. It's only been, once a month that we've been able to do it. When we celebrated Global Play Day, they came to me and said, we want to add more to Global Play Day, so they went in again. And they've really been just doing so wonderfully with these kindergartners. And they go into all the 4 classes, so they really do, yeah.
So what's the best part? What do you enjoy the most?
Playing with the kindergartners.
Playing with the kindergartners. I know. That's my happy place. When I want to hide somewhere, I go into the kindergarten class. Shh, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. If I could, I would love to, on behalf of our team here, present a little appreciation, a little certificate of appreciation for you being here and for you teaching us, right, about everything that you're doing at Santa Pog as Little Learning Ambassadors. I mean, this is only the beginning.
Only the beginning.
Only the
Just
beginning,
started.
definitely. You guys started this off, and now you're going to have other leaders, right, continue in your footsteps, right, and continue to grow this wonderful program. Awesome. By the way, next time that they're visiting the kindergartners, can you guys invite me?
Send her the date of our next, right? Our next
Perfect.
one. Okay.
Luca, if you can come up here, please. Mia? Actually, we're going to stay up here for a group picture. Is that okay? All right, come right up here. Dylan? Ariana? Olivia? Connor? All right, and Chelsea? All right, scooch in, a little bit tighter, All right. Let's get some pictures first of them, and then I definitely want a picture. All right. Miss Curry, come on. Yeah, of course. Come next to Olivia. Luca, look. Cheese. Yes. Yes, it was all fifth. All fifth except for Luca. Dr. Wright, is your presentation going to be equally as exciting? I mean, it is. It is. It is. It definitely is.
I'll keep smiling. It won't be as cute.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hanley. Yes. Live mic. There we go.
Testing.
All right. On.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Hard act to follow, but I would try to stay the same energy and part of the course. My name is Dr. Leonard Wright III. I am the Director of K-12 Student Data and IT, and I am here to present the Instructional Technology Service Mid-Year Report. First and foremost, this is a breakdown of my current department, which comprised of 8 individuals, including myself. We also have 6 support technicians, 4 which we contract through BOCES and 2 in-house. This is the team. First, I want to go over a department overview where, we have constructed my department to serve in 4 separate capacities. Even though each of these capacities could be looked at separately, I think as together they serve as a cohesive unit. We have instructional security, data management, support services, and instructional curriculum framework. First, let's start with the infrastructure and security. Of course, we're talking about our network defenses, our connectivity, whether it be through internet and devices, pretty much all the back-end cybersecurity modes for our department. Got it. Oh. It's fine. No worries. Connectivity is very important, guys. There we go. So data management, a very key component. When we talk about data management, we talk about things such as New York State reporting, Ed Law 2D compliance, which is a very major issue in New York State, and also the data which we use to make the decisions here at West Babylon, whether it be on a curriculum basis or just simple structural support. Also, support services, which kind of sounds exactly what it says. When we traditionally think of technology, we think about supporting the students, supporting the schools. But now it's important to understand that we're not only just supporting students in classes, but now supporting the whole district, right, with everything, whether it be the technology that connects to the HVAC system and everything else. So those support services that we provide. No worries. Connectivity is important. Okay, so now let's talk about the 4th one, which is the instructional curriculum framework. This is more of a developmental phase of our department now. When we think about technology, oftentimes people don't think of it being embedded as part of our curriculum, right? So, you don't ask a math teacher, like, so how are you mathing these days, right? So now understanding that the part of our role in technology is to not only see where this is going, right? We see artificial intelligence. We see all these things that are arising that will change the framework of how we teach, of how our students learn, and the skills that we provide them to step outside once they graduate. So this is ongoing and in progress, and we will mention various details about this throughout the presentation. Got it. So, year to date, of course, some of our more recent updates, we have a new district website, which I am very proud about. The district had worked very hard to ensure that we get a website that's reputable to the school and up to date with the latest standards. So we did a great job with that. We also have acquired things such as, of course, your smart boards and your Chromebooks. But more importantly, Incident IQ, which has systematically been the data capture for not only just technology support, but also facilities management and everything else like that to support our systems. We have other categories such as LineWise, which is our monitoring system for how we monitor the students and their activities on their devices, which we also this year launched Custodio, which is the parental access to that same capability. So now partnering with the parents to, continue to watch our kids. Some statistics, right? Parent Square is a very, very important, useful tool. It's our #1 communication at Law 2D compliance system, which now we are keeping in connection with the community. That's what we do. Anybody in the community could either, if they're a parent, of course, they automatically get this, but any member of the community that resides could have access to all the information that we have in here. They just simply have to put in a request for that. And this is the #1 source we use to communicate with our community, Parent Square. So very active, 99% contactable rate, meaning we have at least one contact either via email or phone number, which we have signed up a lot of our parents in being engaged with that. Some of the other statistics, we have our custodial stats, which we talked about that program where the parents have the ability to monitor their kids. Now, 21% may not seem very big, but you got to remember it accounts for every parent in the household. So that 21% could probably be a greater number if we're looking at it from a household perspective. So that number is actually pretty good considering that we are just beginning that and it just started in November. So 21% is pretty strong. And of course, the year-to-date traffic activity on our new website, which has been booming and continue to do so. So I think the community is using this as a main source of getting all the information necessary for the district. Okay, so of course, some of the budget updates from this year. Again, looking at some of the numbers and what's going on with the finances over in my department, one thing to key highlight is that we will be transferring 2 line items over to the appropriate departments, IT, cybersecurity. Of course, that's automatic, so we're putting that over in the operational budget. I really don't do anything with that. It gets paid, always gets paid, and will be continuous. So we're making sure that stays where it belongs. That's not nothing that I'm doing with that, so I don't want to take credit for spending that money. More so, the state aidable line for the new security cameras and equipment, we put that over to the more appropriate facilities department because a lot of that does tie into the infrastructure, what they do. Not so much, I do support those services, but I'm not necessarily making those purchases. So we did move that over to them. And some of the other categories such as hardware aidable, which is a state-driven number, right? That depends on however the state aid reflections come out. So that number is not even determined by the district, that's determined by the state. And some of the other budgetary items. So since we did move some things, we made it more systematic for what would be appropriate for my department in order to expense properly for all the things that we need to support the district. Some of the other major categories, of course, there is a new category that, thanks to the lovely business official that we have in Mrs. Galante, giving us every opportunity the state gives to help support our school district. There is a software aidable line item too that will be potentially $50,000 that the district will have to be able to spend across any type of software. So that, again, another state aid number, not even driven by the budget, more so by the state. And of course, some of your major, our contract renewals that we have for some of our major systems, our operational supports, whether that be maintenance onto the system and everything else. My conference budget, which I use as a district-wide support service. So, my conference budget isn't just for me. And actually that number was 1027, it's actually 0, because I'm supporting our libraries and some of our staff members to attend some of these important conferences that they want to know and get up to date on our technology. So it is 0, but as of 3 days ago, it was 1027. So, and of course, our biggest expenditure is our BOE services. Now, the good thing about that, by putting more of our services into BOCES, we have a 60% aidable rate. So we really only pay, we get 40% aid back for whatever money we put in. So I think that's important to highlight, and we are looking to get more of our services into BOCES to be consistent with that over time. Now, some of the new things. Of course, we have some very important imperative needs. We do recognize the smartboard need across our district. That is something that is on the radar, as well as Chromebooks. That is steady to keep current with inventory structure and cycle that will keep going to ensure that we are providing teachers with the latest instructional support as possible, as well as the students. We do plan to outfit a wireless upgrade project. We do plan to utilize E-rate funds in order to do that. Currently, right now, we are on the tail end of the latest E-rate cycle, which ends in June. A new E-rate cycle will begin in July, which will last for about 5 years. E-rate's almost like 5-year cycle. So we will be entering into a new cycle. We don't know exactly how much funds that is. It's a projected number. So we will know more information about that in July. Cybersecurity posture here at West Babylon. We do absolutely need to make a concerted effort in a proactive cybersecurity system that is not only monitored, but consistently proactive in defending the protection of our data and services here at West Babylon School District. So that's definitely more important. The instructional technology plan, which is due of June this year, that is something that we are currently in the process of working on in my technology committee. I invite all of you to join if you have any proactive insights and want to know what's going on. Trustee Medina has definitely been joining us for those conversations. I think they've been absolutely phenomenal. And I think the district understands what it needs. And so now we're using those conversations to make a plan for how we need to get there. And last but not least, still in the infancy phase, but, what can we do about approaching AI in the school district, right? We already have Google services, and Google does have a product that's surrounded by AI, and not only that, more compliant than a lot of these other systems that you hear. So that's definitely something that we're looking into. Connectivity is important, I will repeat. Okay, so we spoke about the E-rate cycle. So currently right now, we are at the tail end of the previous E-rate cycle that was for the past 5 years. One of the things we do intend to do, regardless whether it be in this current E-rate cycle or the next E-rate cycle, is to upgrade the network, right? That's one important, we talk about connectivity, we talk about the importance of a wireless upgrade. We're going to try to utilize the ability of the E-rate funds to do that. Now, the two key factors about E-rate, there's 2 ways that you can approach an E-rate project. There's one way, which they call the service provider invoice, where you know the whole cost of a project, which is 100%, and we pay our aidable ratio, which would be 40%. So if I'm need $1 million, I'm only paying 40% of that $1 million, but I still get $1 million project. So that's as simple as that is. Or you can go the additional route, which is paying the whole thing in full and then getting the 60% back. So those are the 2 approaches with E-rate funds. That's how that's utilized. So we do, again, the wireless upgrade would be one of the E-rate projects, and some of these are estimates, and that would be just to cover the entire district. Of course, it's a 5-year cycle, so you don't have to pay it all up front. You can attack it in phases and everything else like that. So that's what we are strategically planning to do. And of course, any questions? I think that's a rather accurate image if you don't say so myself. So any questions, thoughts, comments?
Every time he shows off his skills, I only add him to the list of, now you need to teach me this.
Correct. Correct.
I had a few questions.
Absolutely.
You had mentioned anybody in the community having access to the information from Parent Square?
Correct.
Meaning they would actually have the app itself?
Correct.
Or they would get an email?
So a little bit of both. So there is, say, if you are not a parent and don't have a child, everybody that's a parent automatically, that's automatic. But if you are not a parent and provide the proof that you are a resident, we can give you access to probably more of the district-wide messaging. So if, you know, we want to give communication about Board of Education meetings or anything else going on in the district, they have the ability to get that, whether that be through the app or email.
So it wouldn't be school-specific?
Not school-specific,
the
more
district-wide messages.
community, correct, more community-based.
So that specific group, right, I'm generally the only one that, for the most part, right, will click on that, right? So when it comes, you know, like sharing information with regards to different dates, budget votes, right? So it's our parents plus community. We started that actually Parent Square when we were still with School Messenger, where we put something online saying if you'd like to receive messages, you know, so school closures, right, and things like that.
Okay,
It goes
yeah.
in there. Yep.
And then I just had a question on slide 10,
Yes.
account 2630.45. I just, 2526 was $2,000, and then
Right.
2627 was 25,000. Why so low this cycle and then so high?
So what ended up happening previous to my arrival, the budget was still predicated on a previous budget that was done, which did not include one of the new services that we acquired. So we basically inherited the budget without calculating the cost. So what we did to balance that out a little bit, we kind of recategorized a lot of the line items. So some of the categories that you see here is not what they were called previously. So we kind of recategorized them and then moved the money around in order so that they fit the appropriate category.
Okay. When Mr. Wright had mentioned being proactive with security and being monitored, I thought 2 years ago, after we had that situation, we had signed up for all these services that were going to be providing that.
It's continuing to enhance as the world of technology continues to
Correct.
enhance. Yep.
So
if we're bringing in new companies, is there anything leaving, or are they just upselling us into something else?
So I do think there's one important thing to acknowledge. So, you know, the district has made a decision to switch with our STAG augmentation, which is our technology support provider. The one thing that is important to know is that by kind of going in this direction, I am now lumping the cybersecurity aspect into BOCES, which was never done before. The district was actually paying that cost up front, which takes away the aidable and also takes away the ability to kind of keep that consistently in terms of monitoring it. BOCES now holds whoever wants to provide that service accountable, and we also get the aidable back for that. So that's why you probably see some of the increase in the
Okay, so
BOCES
the
number.
outside service companies we were using, I remember they came and did a presentation.
Right.
We're not using them?
They were not using BOCES. We were paying them directly.
Well, we're no longer using them.
So we're no longer using them, correct.
Okay, okay. Now, in reference to the BOCES, we get 40% back or 60%?
60% aidable.
we
So
get
yeah,
six-
so we
okay.
pay up to 40%,
Up
but
to
if we go through BOCES direct for any services, what ends up happening is that we pay the full price for our item, and then we get that 60% aid back.
There's an admin
Correct.
fee associated.
Correct. There. So
added on.
10%. So
Sure,
add
we're not-
10% for BOCES. So 10% to get your 60% back.
Understood. And that
Absolutely.
comes back the following year after?
Correct. The following year. Correct.
And depending on the what, right? Like sometimes if it's a smaller,
Right.
then it doesn't make sense to kind of go through the process, but larger scale, it 100% makes sense to go through BOCES.
Okay. And then just my last question,
Mm-hmm.
you had mentioned the wireless infrastructure.
Yes.
How far behind are we? I know we had some issues today. I don't know if that was planned.
I,
We had some issues today.
So I'm not
how
going to
far behind
say, I don't think it's a matter of being behind. So the APs that we currently have are approaching end of life. So I think it's more so of not so much falling behind, but staying current
Okay,
with
understood.
the current infrastructure. So that's where we are. I mean, it does work, but as you can see,
Yeah. No, I
It
was
can
just
have
curious
some
because
issues.
I didn't know if it was a situation where we're running on some old technology But you're saying if you're having, before equipment starts to fail,
Right.
you're trying to be proactive.
So more so upgrading. Right now we're working on, basically 5E. We're trying to upgrade to 6 as well as make sure that we can get another 5 years out of the new APs that we're going to put in.
And that's for the entire district?
That would be for the entire district, correct?
Over, what'd you say, 5 years?
5 years. So I give 5 years life cycle for most APs, give or take.
Okay. Is there grants for that stuff, or?
So the process that
Right.
Dr. Wright shared beforehand in terms of the E-rate,
Correct.
right, that has been the funding source that
Yeah.
historically, right, we have used for this type of infrastructure change, because we're talking big dollars, right? So it's already kind of built in that
Yep.
we get the financial support, so we're paying kind of the difference, right? And we generally, instead of paying for the whole thing and then getting the reimbursement, we do here's the smaller portion of it, and then the higher portion is paid by them. But yeah, through E-rate is how we historically have made these huge purchases.
And also, just to comment on that too, the new tech support provider that we have also does grant projections in writing at no extra charge. So they keep their eye out on potential opportunities that come along. There was an opportunity in June, but I got here in August. So, we'll keep our eyes open
Okay,
moving
all
forward.
right. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem.
So, Dr. Wright, good to see you again.
Absolutely.
So I think Chris already asked a question for me. I'm just going to kind of glaze over it again.
Yep.
A 2630-4491 IT cybersecurity.
Yep.
You're transferring that. You're
Correct.
putting that to BOCES. BOCES is going to be responsible
Correct.
for that
So
line item
that's
now?
why you see the increase in the BOCES number, right? And
Okay.
60,000 of that will be for
For
cybersecurity.
cybersecurity.
Correct.
Okay. And then when you're talking cybersecurity, you're talking about Sentinel-1?
Correct.
Okay. Those agents work in Chromebooks?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
And also, on top of that, we also have LineWise already. So that's
Okay.
almost like, it's almost going to be a redundancy, but it'll be a more proactive approach to be in front of LineWise, where LineWise kind of picks up on whatever activity is going. We're trying to put something in front of that to make sure that even if the activity is possible, we kind of stop it before it gets
Right.
there.
Well, I think. Well, I mean, I don't know LineWise. I haven't used it before,
Right.
but LineWise is more of a notification type of
Correct.
system to kind
Exactly.
of keep track from us at the parent level.
Correct.
What they're doing, whereas Sentinel-1 is going to be that
100%.
antivirus, anti-malware kind of
All
protection,
the
right?
entire suite. So
Yeah.
that's exactly what we need. At
And we
the
don't have
district.
that right now.
We
on there.
currently
don't
do
have-
not have one system that does all of that.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Are the wireless routers that we're using right now, are they all Arubas right now too, or are
Correct. They are
Okay.
all Arubas.
So it's the same infrastructure.
The
When you say
exact same.
upgrading the network,
Correct.
are you talking just the Wi-Fi adapters, or are you also thinking about the network stack?
So some of our network stack has over time already been replaced, but this one is focused specifically on the APs and the cabling infrastructure.
Got it. Okay. And then for the dollar amount that you propose here,
Yep.
just under 555,000.
Right.
That's if we wrote a check today and replaced every single
Everything,
piece
correct.
of equipment in the
District-wide,
district. So,
correct.
like to your point,
Yep.
we could lay this out in a rotating 5-year
100%.
plan, and so like we do a set year 1, a set year 2,
100%.
and then once we're done with set 5, that set 1 that we did 5 years ago will just
Absolutely.
be systematically replaced.
100%.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
That's exactly the plan.
Good. Yep. Yeah. That's how I would approach it. Nope.
Dr.
All right,
Farley,
thank you.
when we see the 6%, the 6.5% increase for the IT,
Yep.
is that's without any of the aid coming back? So does that get offset the following year?
That's purely in terms of here, the aidable categories, then we get the following year.
Correct.
Okay.
And also, it's important to highlight that out of that 6.5%, about $100,000 of that is those state-driven numbers. So it's like it's really not 6.5%, but 6.5% increase overall.
Okay.
Yep.
So can I just ask, just to be clear, that new software line, that's aidable, so that previously was kind of interdispersed?
correct.
And now we've pulled that?
That
and-
takes a proactive business official to apply for it so that we can get the money. That's what that means. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, and can you say specifically what some of that software may be as an example?
We never had it, so I mean, it really is very broad for the state. So it really could be any software.
Oh,
But
okay.
what the plan would be for that would be if the district wishes to explore new opportunities or anything like that, that's where this will come from. We wouldn't take something that we already have in the general fund out of that to put in there because, again, it's state driven, so it's not guaranteed, but we would definitely, try to utilize that for some of those requests that have been coming along.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
we get often, right, requests from, again, the
100%.
curriculum and instruction
Yeah.
lens, right? Our teachers asking for various different programs that we haven't had in the budget. So that line is going to allow us the ability to get some of
Yeah.
those subscriptions, right, for our teachers to use with their students. Yeah.
Well, just listening to some of the budget presentations, that was an ask from some,
Yes. Yep.
some
So that'll help.
departments.
Definitely will help.
Great job, Victoria. Great job.
Great team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Dr.
much. Thank you for
Wright.
having me.
you.
This point, we are going to transition to provide a mid-year update by Mr. Maddie on our transportation department.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Obviously, my name is Michael Maddy. I'll be talking about the transportation department, and we'll wait till it pops up.
While they're setting up, I do want to thank the right hand of Dr. Wright, Ms. Chauvin, for being here to support.
Okay. All right. So we're ready to go. So I'm going to start off with some mid-year highlights. So some of the mid-year highlights we've had this year was we responded, I believe, well to the elementary closure of Forest Avenue, and we revamped elementary school routes in response to that closure. We've improved staff morale within our department. We've improved communication with the public. So every time you get a parent square, that's us. Yeah, so we're always notifying everybody of any changes or anything that pertains to transportation. We're always trying to communicate with the public and be transparent. We also internally did organize a food drive for the Babylon Breast Cancer Coalition, which was actually part of my transportation team in the office that helped organize that. And I wanted to highlight that for everybody to see that's what we're doing on the inside.
Excellent.
So I'm gonna go back. So personnel overview. So right now we have a transportation supervisor, which is myself, a head bus driver, 2 clerical staff, 21 full-time drivers, 19 full-time monitors, and 3 mechanics. Within that number, if you see that I have highlighted a 1 retirement, 1 resignation, 1 anticipated retirement. So far this year, we had 2 people leave as full-time drivers, and we're anticipating another retirement at the end of in a few months, and then there are rumblings of a few more. So it is the staff that is starting to shrink. And then we've also had 2 retirements and 1 resignation in both full-time monitors situation area. And just to give a frame of reference, the last time transportation supervisor had given this presentation in August of 23, there was 2 bus head drivers, there were 1 clerical staff, and 39 full-time drivers, and 24 monitors. So just to kind of give you a frame of reference over 2 years of what's happening with the staff. So moving on to scope of work, we serve over 3,000 in-district students among all of our schools, minus Forest, since we don't have that anymore. But we also have 110 out-of-district schools, which go to 24 out-of-district schools. These are the kids that have special accommodations, need to receive special transportation for those schools. And then we have 148 private and parochial students that go to the various private and parochial schools around the island. And we serve 27 private and parochial schools. So that's that's the population we serve. And with those, we just have to keep in mind that each of those schools technically tie up one route per school, meaning out of district and a private parochial. So that's actually a route per school, if you want to take that into mind. And some out of district schools do take maybe more than one route, as they are going in vans, if they are required to have curb-to-curb transportation in a small vehicle. So the numbers do escalate when we get outside of the district and we're transporting that population. Okay, so I wanted to highlight the in-district work over the years. So last year we had 17 total large buses in the district, and then we had 12 vans total. But if you noticed in my presentation, I put 14 large buses. That's West Babylon served, West Babylon employees driving those particular buses. So when we start, I also put a note where in the school year, Suffolk Transportation had 2 in-district routes to start the year. They finished with 3. Now, starting this year, we have 16 total large bus routes. We're serving with 12 of them with West Babylon employees, and 8 total van routes within the district, and we're serving with 7 with West Babylon employees. And I also indicated that as of right now, it's Suffolk Transportation has 5 in-district routes within West Babylon, and it's increasing. As I've already indicated, we're anticipating more people leaving the transportation department. So a little bit of a plan of action, but first I wanted to go over the obstacles that we're dealing with at the moment, which is we have no qualified applicants. We do not have a training program. We do not have anything of any to be able to bring in applicants, or the applicants are just simply seeking other jobs that are not here. And then we have retirements, or people who are starting to retire, as I've already highlighted. The New York State electric vehicle mandate, and then we also have an aging fleet as well. So somewhat with our main plan of action is to continue cooperative transportation with Suffolk Transportation as we contract those buses. So, like I said earlier, I know this hasn't been a presentation that's been given a while, so I wanted to highlight over the years the last budget summaries for 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25, and then our current year. As you can see, there's fluctuating numbers as it kind of drifts downward in the contract salaries and bus driver salaries and those lines. But as, go to the next slide. Thanks. And it's also indicated here in the equipment, looking at all the numbers here, that the numbers are trending downwards within the district, but the biggest piece that's really, can we go to the next slide, please? Thanks. The biggest piece is contract transportation skyrocketing. With that, we have shown that we are going up, and we expected to have an forecasted expenditure of 2.7 million, but and I'll be perfectly honest, we're going to exceed that number. With just because the way the budget was structured, it was built with a structure of having all the employees within West Babylon doing the work, but now we're experiencing loss of employees, so therefore we have to bring our transportation over to Suffolk Transportation. So that number is going upwards. And then, as you can see, as I was speaking, you were seeing numbers, kind of the trend lines of the numbers. It kind of looks like it's going up as the years go on, as one would expect with the inflation and CPI and a few other metrics. But then as we get to the current forecast total, what I did was I compared our 25-26 numbers with the proposed budget numbers for 26-27. You can see there's an increase of about a total line about $1 million. As you can see, where the pupil transportation line contains our in district salaries, and that number is going down, but then it's the change is being reflected in the contract transportation line. So we are going to go up in budget. And then some items to consider when we are looking at for this budget upcoming year is due to the limited bus drivers, we're going to increase contract transportation budget lines while having a decrease in the personnel budget lines, gasoline, maintenance, bus insurance, and then some unpredictable variables which we can't necessarily forecast at this time is who's staying, who's going, and if we are bringing anybody on board, and then allocation of students to various out-of-district schools. Like I said, each of those out-of-district schools is one route. That number will go up or down depending on where we're transporting all these students. So it is a number, and we don't know, simply just don't know at this time. So it's a very hard variable to predict. And then one of the biggest costly challenges that's coming on the horizon, which we are aware of, is the New York State electric vehicle mandate. Whether we decide to keep our fleet within the house or pay the outside contractor who has to adhere to these mandates, the electric vehicle mandates, the cost is going to go up, as we know. So it's just a cost of doing business in the transportation world. So with that said, I know that we're supposed to make requests. I have no requests. Basically, I'm just basically...
The EV mandate took it away from you.
Yeah.
You read between the lines.
Yeah. It's more or less just what are we planning to do?
Right. General conversation, right? And we've been talking about that. And obviously, Mr. Matty was here when we did the Wendell, right? The analysis, right, of our facilities. In terms of changing and converting, right, our department to be able to sustain and to host, right, and to have charging stations and all the above, right? In addition to, obviously, from a actual vehicle perspective, right, that
Correct.
Mandate, there are conversations happening as to whether or not the dates as they're currently written within the law, right, of 2027 and 2035 will remain there, or whether that will be changed. I can share with you, and some of you have been in different meetings with me, right, at, whether it's School Boards Association or legislative, right, sessions, where it is one of the advocacy points, right, for all groups, right, school boards, for superintendent groups, right, administrators, for there to be, at the bare minimum, a shift on these dates, right, with regards to the requirement. There's concerns about the Long Island grid, right, all of the above.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the cost consideration factor, right? Again, there was an extensive review for our department and a potential possible kind of starting point in terms of a multi-year expenditure plan to bring us up to speed. There are, and Mr. Ant and I chatted about this because there was recent discussions about possible waivers, right, for a district to apply to kind of push off in terms of the deadline. Right. But I was happily informed by Mr. Ant. I had that date kind of in terms of the waiver piece coming up for this March, right? But in reality, it's the following March. That's been clarified with the state, right? And, we were all, districts were thinking kind of, next month. So this is a topic that, not necessarily in terms of tonight, right? I'm thinking we were chatting about possibly similar to how we did with the the presentation with Wendell in terms of the study, continuing that conversation maybe at a summer workshop, right? You know, as Mr. Matty mentioned, if it doesn't go away, it is a cost that it's, again, hopefully, a big asterisk there. Ideally, similar to what we're talking about beforehand with UPK, right? The state comes up with funding for it.
Yeah.
It's a hard, I can't imagine what that line is when we know what our line is, right? For them to multiply that out across the state, right? So, there's no district that's just gonna be like, oh, well, yeah, I have $12 million to just do the following. So there's a lot that's out of our hands here, right? At the present moment, the law does indicate that any purchases in terms of vehicles
Yes.
from 2027 have to be electric. In order for you to buy that
Yes,
electric,
any
you also need the
vehicle that
charging
would-
station for it,
Yeah.
right?
Any vehicle that after 2027 has to be electric unless you demonstrate that you are moving forward with the EV, then you could qualify for the extension, the 2-year.
Right, the waiver, yes.
And then you could do two-year extensions, which would effectively make it 4 years, but you have to show that you are
Right, then that brings us closer to the
EV.
deadline,
Yes.
right? Yeah, so it's gonna, you know, it definitely, we have a little bit more room in terms of the discussion, in terms of time. But, you know, we typically, right, because we do have an aging fleet, right? So in the absence of EV, we probably would have been incorporating, continuing to do our purchasing plan with vehicles like we've
Yes.
done forever, right? You know, purchasing a couple of new, you know, buses, and then it gets paid off in multiple years, and then circling back around. So we are not doing that, right? So we're going to continue these discussions, and then we'll see what comes of it. I don't know, Mr. Ant, did I capture the summary?
Yeah, I think that the major concern now is just that the mandate of 2035, that's set in stone right now and has not changed. And we have no indication that it's going to change at this point. What the waiver is, and the extension of that, is that the current law says that starting July 1st of 2027, any purchases, procurement of transportation vehicles from that point forward all have to be electric. And the non-compliance of that puts your state aid at risk. And so, you know, no one wants to be in that position. So the consideration for the board is whether or not they want to apply for that extension. The deadline is March 1st of 27. Applications will be accepted prior to that, reviewed on a rolling basis. And what that would do is just extend that initial July 1st, 2027 deadline, in that wouldn't be from that point forward, every procurement needs to be electric. It gives you a little bit more time, but as Mr. Matty said, as long as you're taking steps towards the transition during that time, which would be part of the requirement of the extension.
Question on that, what steps do we have to show to say, okay, we're, like, what do we have to prove? Like, do we have to say, okay, we have a blueprint for charging stations? Or like, what's the measure?
So the waiver request will go to SED. SED has a rubric right now of certain questions and point system as to what they're considering. And it's different things. So it's, you know, whether or not a budget was recently voted down by the voters, whether or not the district has the infrastructure in place already or has to purchase all of it for the, you know, electrical charging stations.
Right.
There's different factors that the state has put out there saying that if you request this waiver, here's how we're going to look at it, and there's a point system attached to it, but ultimately, who gets what amount of points, that's for SED to assess and evaluate based on an application.
Right, and I think I remember from the presentation from a couple weeks ago, did he say that the average age life of the buses for the EV fleet would be 8 years? Is that what I remember? Is that the battery life, 8 years?
I don't remember offhand.
I don't remember offhand.
Okay.
I do remember him saying one or two of our routes, they did not have a battery capacity enough to fulfill. Which is one obstacle.
Yeah, that was the biggest
Right. Is there enough range? Because we asked that question about the range, and they said the biggest range was like 90 miles.
And the use, if we have a let's say athletic out in Southampton,
right?
How do we know they have a spot to charge?
Right.
So there was no answer for that. So
Right.
hopefully the state takes into consideration that. You can't commit to something when you don't have the requirements for us to meet
Yeah.
that mandate. you know.
Right.
But that's, we got time for that.
Again, in our case, we have those examples, right? In other places of New York, forget about it, right? Like where
Yeah.
the districts are so spread apart.
Beyond the
Since you're-
schools, you know, at the meeting last Friday with the legislators, they said Long Island is not equipped. Their grid, their infrastructure, Long Island, you know, PSE&G, the city would they're not, the infrastructure's just not there yet to charge all these buses.
Right.
You know, there's bigger problems than districts paying for this too, like, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
What determines if, of a bus being replaced? Is it just age, or is it wear and tear, the maintenance issues?
Well, so with our current fleet, we have mostly. I didn't fully hear your question, but do you want to start over and I'll
Yeah,
answer?
what determines if a bus needs to be replaced or not?
Typically, we can get a bus for our current fleet. We have 10 years, I would say, 10, 12 years.
So it's a time issue, the years.
Yeah, deterioration of the bus, it would be 10 to 12 years. Again, that's a variable, as you know, if you run a bus more frequently, it's going to deteriorate quicker. And on top of that, we have to consider our fleet. We have buses that are much older. It's all not the same age. It's we have buses from 2015. We have buses from each chronological year. The most recent buses we have are from 2021, and there are no more. Maybe 2022 but we have no more buses after that point. So at that point, we can't buy any more buses, obviously. So even if we were to purchase a bus, a gas bus, we probably wouldn't get it to 2027. So you kind of have this like 5-year window where you're kind of trying to balance the age of the fleet and make sure it doesn't break down. So
And that's a good question, though. Like, let's say if we are getting short on our fleet, like, what's the turnaround time on ordering for lack of a better phrase, a classic bus?
Yeah.
Like, is it a year in order to get a new bus? Like, let's say we
turnaround?
ordered one next month.
So with the EVD mandate, there's a rush to buy all gas buses right now.
Right.
So they're like
So you
non-existent.
can't even really
Okay.
buy them. Because even if you find a vendor, the turnaround
willing
time
to
is going
sell
to be
'em.
2 years, 3 years out.
it's a long
And
window.
you're already up against that 2027 timeline unless you get an extension.
And we
but-
have to buy it from a New York
Yeah.
State authorized
Yes.
reseller, correct?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Mr. Matty had mentioned a training program. I recall us talking about that in the past, a few years back. Isn't there some requirement of licensing you'd have to train? We don't have that on hand at this point?
No, not yet.
Okay, okay. So, and just another question, a couple questions. In reference to the out-of-district, whether it's student services, private schools, that number is increasing?
Yes, right. So from a student services perspective, you know, I think
Yeah, I had
Mr.
the
Matty
numbers in
mentioned
there,
beforehand, right? So,
Yeah, it is going up.
So when we look at, as a group, we look at, just let's say overall for transportation, we see, whether you want to look at outside contracted transportation or just the overall bottom line increase, it's not really apples to apples in saying it's not the same number of routes that we're running. There's an increase due to an increase in need. Not just that, you know, we had a certain number and we're up 1 million and we still have the same number of routes. It's an increase
Yeah.
with an increase in need.
different needs.
Different
within
needs,
that.
correct,
Yeah,
right.
different
Yeah.
needs. Yep. Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In reference to the offset, I would think you see an increase in the contract aid. Let me just get back there, so I'm looking at the right number. Sorry about that. I think Mr. Matty had mentioned even this year, we're be over on the expenditures of contract
Yes.
transportation.
We are.
Yes.
So when we compare the increase, as shown on that last slide, against budgeted expenditures, that's not what the actual expenditure is going to be. Because he's
No.
already said there'll
No.
be an increase.
Correct.
So
In this
it's
year.
going to dilute, we're actually going to wind up spending more. So that increase in transportation is somewhat, it's still an increase, but it's not against what we're actually going to spend.
No, correct, right? And that's that line of expenditure to date, right? You know, because
Correct.
we haven't
Which
closed
you
out the
can't tell,
school year
right.
yet. Yep, correct. Yep.
The expenses decrease in reference to the in-house part of transportation. I'm sorry, you know what, I gotta go to this thing. you see it in some of the itemized lines.
Yes.
You see a decrease of in-house expenses. It doesn't,
Yeah,
doesn't completely offset the full increase on the outside. But there are probably some lines, I'm going to guess, whether it's gasoline, parts, that will show a decrease, they would trail.
Yes.
Because you are budgeting differently. So you
Yeah.
won't see the immediate, okay, so gasoline, you will budget a little bit heavier than you probably will need, and
Yeah.
parts, because you have to, the what
Yeah,
ifs.
so what's going to happen is you're going to see next year, you might not see the numbers, but you'll see a trend line downwards of personnel lines, meaning people not being here, gasoline, because we're just not going to, it's a contract already, contract with the Suffolk Transportation already accounts for gasoline, and then maintenance is going to go down, and then bus insurance which is another, is about 130 grand. That's also going to go down as well.
Right. So some lines, such as like a salary, is a hard number. You kind of know what that's going to be. Other lines, like you're describing, it's kind of you're keeping a safe cushion there until you have a better track record.
Definitely.
Okay. I don't know that makes the $1 million increase feel any better, but I think there's a different understanding of the impact on that number, because you're comparing it to what you budgeted, but we already know we're going to be over because of the increased reliance on out-of-district stuff. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also didn't do my last slide. Questions? I think we already covered it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Apologize.
All right.
All good. Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Maddie. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
And
Thank
thank
you,
you,
guys.
Ms. Newell in the audience. Mr. Maddie's right-hand person also.
I get as many emails and messages from her than I
From
do
Ms. Newell?
from you.
Yes.
Every day.
We should do it at the end of the year, track it all out.
Thank you for
All
doing
right.
that.
So yes, and I know Mr. Maddie mentioned it in terms of beforehand, right? One of the major goals, right, that we charged Mr. Maddie and the department with, right, was enhancing our communications, right? And again, Ms. Newell, Mr. Maddie, right, you've all done that, right, for our families. Delays are going to happen, things are going to happen, right, at the forefront. As long as families know, right, then it's just a different conversation. So again, we appreciate that because you both have absolutely done that. All right. So at this point, right, so throughout the past several months, right, our department leaders have been presenting mid-year updates, right, along with proposed budget needs and wants, right, for the 26-27 school year, right. Case in point, tonight was, IT and transportation, and then again, the last 6 or so budget board meetings, right, we've had various different department presentations. These presentations are going to continue, right, throughout the month of March as part of our collaborative budget development process. This evening, Ms. Galante and I will review the administrative and capital components of the draft 26-27 budget, and we're going to highlight several department priorities that we're considering as part of the program component. I mentioned those 3 because those are the major categories, right? The administrative component, the capital component, and the program component. Our administrators and our board, right, our team, our overarching goal, I should say, right, is clear, right, to present a fiscally responsible, balanced budget, right, to our community that sustains our educational programs, addresses some of the identified needs, right, in all these different department presentations, and absolutely remains within our allowable tax levy limit, right, and in this case this year, our limit is 2.21%. That is, our allowable tax levy. So again, staying within our tax levy, not going beyond that, right, and presenting a balanced budget. That is our overall goal. So with that being said, Ms. Galante is going to start us off, and I'll be chiming in here and there.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Farrelly. Good evening, Board of Education. Good evening, West Babylon community. Thank you for joining us for our first budget presentation for the 2026-27 school year. And our first slide is just a budget calendar. Naturally, we start off today is our first budget presentation. On February 24th, the Board of Ed will be having a finance workshop. On March 10th is the second budget presentation that we will have. April 14th is the final proposed budget presentation, and the Board of Ed will adopt the budget on the 14th. May 5th is the budget hearing, and May 19th is the budget vote. So what we're going to go over tonight, is the overview. We're going to talk a little bit about the state aid we received so far, other revenues that we have. We're going to talk about our reserves, our tax levy limit, and as Dr. Farrelly said, we're going to go over the administrative component and the capital component of the budget. Okay, so on January 20th, the executive budget came out from the state, and our foundation aid had an increase of 1%, which equated to a little over $300,000. Some of the state aid that we did receive decreased, because it is based on student enrollment, and as you know, enrollment is going down, so naturally those aids will be going down. The legislative budget, which is the final budget that we usually receive from the state, is usually due on or before April 1st. And it is very important for us to receive that, since the board is going to adopt on April 14th. It would be nice to know what that final budget is from the state. There have been a couple of years that the governor did not hit that deadline, which kind of makes it really hard for school districts to know what the revenue will be from the state. But hopefully this year they will be on track. So in this next slide is the state aid that we did receive compared to what the executive budget said that West Babylon would receive for the current 25-26 school year. And as you see, the foundation aid of 1%, it equated to about $332,000. Not really the increase we were looking for or hoping for. There is talk that maybe another 1% will be given within the next budget cycle, but yet there is nothing definitive about that amount. As we go down, your public-private excess costs went down a little bit, and that can only be because not all our students have been stacked yet, because they pulled this information as of October 15th of 2025. We had to report by that deadline. And usually around that time is when the state will take all the district's information and do their estimates of their budget based on that information. So not all information is complete at that time. BOCES aid went up from what we're getting this year. Textbook, software, library, hardware aid, and technology aid. Again, those are the lines that have gone down a little bit. Those are the lines that are based on student enrollment. So it's so much per student in your district is what you get for those lines. Supplemental public ethics cost is the same, so is the high tax aid remained the same. Building aid went down a little bit because your building aid, some of your projects are rolling off your building aid from years ago. So naturally your building aid is going to go down. Once we submit for new projects, then your building aid will go up again. Transportation aid, again, is down a little based on when we reported in the summer our transportation aid. Remember now we're reporting more contract aid than in-district aid. So I think that had some effect on your transportation aid. And as you see, your total state aid compared to what we're getting for this year is actually only up $31,354 because you had some increases and you had some decreases. So that's why I feel it is very important for us to hopefully get that second run from the state before we adopt the budget. Okay, reserves. Why do we use reserves and why do we need reserves? So our reserves we use to offset budget expenditures. We appropriate certain reserves in our annual budget to help fund costs and allow the district to, number one, stabilize our tax levy. absorb some of the costs of increases that we receive, and it's also good for financial planning. The common reserves that we have been using in our budget most of the time is our workman's comp reserve. You are supported in workman's comp, so you should use your reserve. Unemployment insurance reserve, which is not really that high. Our EBLR reserve, which is used for the payouts. And then there are the two retirement reserves, ERS and TRS, that we use to help the increases in those pensions. So when we close our books in June of 2025, the first column shows what was left in those reserves: workman's comp, unemployment, teacher's retirement, employee's retirement, and accrued benefit employee reserve, and your capital reserve. And you had a total of $16,668,000 approximately in all your reserves. This year in 2025, in the budget, we said we were going to use $1,550,000 out of those reserves. So if we do use all that money, that $1.5 million, when we close our books, and if we don't add any money into the reserves when we close our books in 2026, your estimated reserve balance would be approximately $15,118,000. Okay. I would say you will probably not use all your unemployment reserve. You will probably use all of your workman's comp reserve. And again, it depends on the retirements that come in for the teacher's retirement and employee retirement. And you will use your EBLR reserve for anyone who will be retiring. All right, let's talk a little bit about the tax levy. So what is the tax levy? It's the amount of money a school district collects from our local property taxpayers in a given year to help fund the annual school budget. It is not anyone's individual tax bill. It is not your tax rate. Instead, it is the overall dollar amount the district needs to raise through property taxes after subtracting all other revenue sources, such as our state aid, federal aid, our reserves, our fund balance, any grants that we get, fees and rentals, and interest income. Once the Board of Education determines the tax levy amount, it is presented to the voters through an annual school budget vote each May. It represents the total local share of the school budget. Under New York state law, a district calculates the tax levy limit, often called a 2% cap, and we'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide, though the actual limit can be above or below 2% depending on several formula factors. For example, your pilots, your capital exemptions, and your growth factor. A district may propose a levy within the cap, which will require just a simple majority voter approval, or it may propose a levy above the cap, which requires the 60% voter approval. We put in a slide of the history of West Babylon's tax levy from 2013 to the current year, 2026. And as you see, there's a range there of 0 to 4%. But on an average, it averaged anywhere between 2 and I would say maybe 3.5%, the tax levy history. So this is the formula that is used to calculate the tax levy limit calculation. And if you go down to the fifth line that says allowable levy growth factor, 1.02, that's your 2% cap. That is where that came about, that tax cap was capped at 2%. That line can never be more than 2%. That's your consumer price index, or your CPI. So if your consumer price index one year is 3.5%, in this formula, it can only be 2. If it is 1.5% one year, it will be 1.5% in this formula. It could be lower than 2, but not ever higher than 2. So that's a little what has made this whole thing a little confusing for people, because they think when their own levy should not be more than 2%, and that is not the case. That is where the 2% comes in. So again, just quickly going through the formula, you have to, add in this current year's pilots and take out this current year exclusions, and then you subtract next year's pilots and you add in the exclusions, and you come up with a proposed tax levy. And the proposed tax levy is at $87,923,724. That all equates to a tax levy limit for the 26-27 school year of 2.21%. Basically, if you go back to that slide with all the levies from 2013, you're basically a little bit on the lower side of your average tax levy for those years. And that 2.21% equates to an increase in the tax levy of $1,898,922. The next slide shows the revenues that we're projecting for the 26-27 budget compared to this current budget. So if you see total state aid, the difference is about $1 million from last year. And then all our other revenues, like our payments in lieu of taxes, or those are your pilots, have gone up. Your Forest Avenue, if you remember when we did the budget last year, we weren't sure what was happening with Forest Avenue, and we had only put in a revenue of about $450,000 because we didn't think we were going to be renting or leasing the whole building. Well, it came out that we did. So now your revenue for leasing Forest Avenue is $775,000. Interest and earnings, we're expecting to be a little higher than we anticipated for this year. Performing Arts Center, your PAC Center, has been great in bringing in revenue, so we increased that revenue a little bit. And then there's a whole bunch of other smaller revenues that are other revenues. Appropriated fund balance, we are not going to use or appropriate any appropriated fund balance for the 26-27 school year. We will be using some reserves. So far, we're thinking of using $250,000 from our ERS reserve, $250,000 from our TRS reserve, $850,000 from our workman's comp reserve, and $50,000 from our unemployment reserve. And again, there you see the tax levy of that $87,923,000 compared to the $86 million of this current year, which gives you that 2.21% levy increase and the total revenue. Now, projected budget, again, is a little higher than our revenue at this point in time. So do we have a balanced budget right now? No, we do not. Okay, and what we're working on now is the program side of the budget. Mr. Payne and Mr. Hanley are working on sections and programs and enrollment. All that has to come into an equation to see exactly what's needed in the program side of the budget for next year. So at this point, we do not have a balanced budget, but we are working on that. Okay, so let's start with the, as Dr. Farrelly said, the budget has 3 components: administrative, capital, and program. So tonight we're going to do the administrative and the capital. So on the first slide after that you will see encompasses a few of these budget codes. And the 1010 budget code, the Board of Ed budget code includes, any kind of memberships, budget vote, Professional development data is needed, our district clerk codes, superintendent codes, and all of the necessary conferences, dues, materials, supplies, memberships, things that are needed in that area. Also, in administrative, there is the business office, which includes the assistant superintendent for finance. We have an accountant, we have a treasurer, we have 2 senior clerks and 4 account clerks in our business office that do payroll, cash disbursements, benefits, and purchasing. And also included are all the professional services that we need, the software that we need, educational data services, materials and supplies, and all the services we do get from BOCES.
Ms. Galante, hold on. Yep, there we go. Good. Thank you.
Also included in the administrative component, are these other codes that are also salaries for our contractual people, then also our claims auditors, our external, internal auditors. We have our treasurer, our deputy treasurer, our BOCES cooperative purchasing. Bond counsel, our fiscal advisors, our labor counsel, our board counsel, all those things are in, as you could see. This slide will give you all that. So Board of Ed is up a little bit due to the fact of the election machines that the Board of Elections, we have to lease them from them now. They're not dealing with the election machines anymore. District clerk, again, the supplies and her training is in there. District meeting went down a little bit. Some of those expenses got shifted up to the 1040 line. Chief school administrator is up a little bit. Again, supplies, contractual obligations. The business office actually went down a little bit because of our BOCES services, where as a lot of the administrators and directors who have been presenting have stated that we are shifting some expenses to different lines, that it kind of just makes more sense for the people who have to operate those lines to know what their expenses are. So a lot of times when we're doing comparisons now, it's going to be a little skewed. But if you ask the question, I could tell you why it is skewed. Again, our auditing services, treasurer, deputy treasurer, purchasing, a lot of those lines, fiscal agent, really not much changes in those lines. We did do a little bar graph as a visual. So you could see a lot of categories are basically flat, if up just slightly, or some of them are actually down from prior years. The darker blue on the left is 26-27. The middle bar is 25-26 budget, and the last bar is the 24-25 actual expenses. So also in the administrative component are legal services, personnel, bond counsel. It incorporates our deputy superintendent and HR office and his assistants and all the things that they need to operate there. Human resources, all the software that's needed, OLAS and ASOP for attendance. Public relations, central data processing, which are a lot of BOCES services. All of the district's insurance is under unallocated insurance, and also the BOCES admin charge. And again, you can see all those lines here. No dramatic increases on any of these lines. Actually, one of the items that Dr. Wright was talking about in IT, his insurance for cybersecurity actually got shifted in that unallocated insurance line. So that drew that up a little bit. Plus, we talked about insurance a lot last year because our increase in insurance was about 24%. This year, the increase in your insurance is between 8 and 10%. They're just giving us a range right now, which again is high, but not as high as it was last year. So that was kind of good news in a way. And again, all right, there you go. Our little bar graphs for our legal personnel, central data processing, BOCES fees, once again, and the insurance. You can see, you know, it is very visual now that your insurance line has gone up significantly over the past 2 years. Okay, and we're still in the administrative component, and we're going to wrap it up with the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction and all of the materials and supplies and BOCES services that they need there. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see curriculum supervision is up slightly. Then line 2020, supervision, regular school. That's actually down, and what drove that down a little bit is that's where your principals, assistant principals are, and now with the closing of Forest, you're down one principal. So that kind of drove that line down. And then research and planning is that BOCES report as far as the district uses to project enrollment out. So bottom line for your administrative component, it's increased it went from this year, $7,890,000, and for the 26-27 school year, it will be $7,972,000. And there was a slide for the last few budget lines. Okay, now we start with the capital component. The capital component deals with our building and grounds, all of those employees and their salaries, and the building and grounds and maintenance crew, maintenance and operation, their salaries, overtime, their supplies and equipment, and repairs, uniforms, and things like that. And also in that capital component line of 1620 is our security and the personnel, school resource officers, all the supplies that they need, cameras, equipment, and their professional development. Also in the capital line is all our financial obligations that we need to fund the school, meaning that from time to time you will go out for a bond to borrow a bond. You borrow bands, those are bond anticipation notes. You borrow every year your TAN, tax anticipation notes, because your tax money doesn't come in to mid-January. Meanwhile, you're operating your school year from July. So you need some funds to get you through from July to December. And also your leases. You have leases for vehicles, you have leases for buses, and you have your energy performance contract. So operation and maintenance, that's up, again, because we did transfer the cameras of $35,000 in one of those lines. We also increased building and grounds supplies and materials because the board would like the department to do more projects in-house. And to do that, they do need additional funds to buy the materials to do these projects. So that's what's driving that increase. And then I split out, again, we broke out some lines, and these are some of the lines that you will see broken out from now on. We broke out your debt service. Instead of it just saying debt service and everything on it, and leases and just everything on it, broke it out between your bonds, which went down. The district did refinance the 2015 bond last spring and saved about $400,000 by refinancing. There are your bands, and then you borrowed your TAN, And then you have your leases for your vehicles and for your buses. And then you have your energy performance contract, which is phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1, 2026-27, is your last year of your energy performance contract, phase 1. That is all paid off now, and then you'll just have phase 2, unless the district decides to go out and see what they can do with energy performance contract and start a phase 3. So your total capital component for this year that we're in now is $13,412,000. And for the 26-27 school year, it will be $14,321,000. Okay, and there you can see again the bar graphs of all those lines. Bonds, it actually is down a little bit. Your bands are down. Your TAN just remains the same. You go out and you borrow about the same money all the time. And your building and grounds and operations is slightly up. Some of the increases that are included in the administrative and capital budget components that we put into the budget right now were 2 more employees for building and grounds to be used for outdoors for the grounds, like a grounds crew. So 2 FTE employees would come out to about $89,000. We put in a line for architect fees, which you didn't have. The architect has to do your 5-year plan this year in 26-27. And then also your legal fees, we increased your legal fees. And then again, the voting, because of the Board of Elections and the changes in the voting machines, we had to increase that by $10,000. Dr. Farrelly, you're going to take it over now?
Yes.
Okay.
So, looking forward, right, our next formal budget workshop is March 10th, right? And on that particular date, we're going to dive deeply into the program budget component, right? And we will also talk about any update, right, and anything that we're hearing from a revenue perspective, right? Ms. Galante shared before information with regards to state aid, you know, kind of where we're at right now in terms of the use of some reserves, right? So some of those lines, based on information we receive and based on where we're at with the whole budget, right, we may be recommending some changes there. So although we're going to dive deeply into the program component, I did want to take a moment to share some of the program component that we have included in the current draft budget, right? As was mentioned by, you know, Mr. Maddie, kind of each of the different department leaders, Dr. Wright. The budget is a constant evolving, you know, process, right? Every day as we're getting additional information, we're making changes. The day-to-day changes in terms of expenditures this year, and also, again, our projected needs for next year. So this current budget draft, right, maintains our increased K-5 academic intervention services. If you recall, we increased that from last year to this year. Obviously, our full-day kindergarten program, our district-wide current athletic programs, our club and co-curricular programs, our mental health professional student supports, senior high school course elective offerings, right? Of course, that's enrollment dependent. CT, BOCES, high school, the student offerings, the same amount, right, that we have allowed, you know, in the last couple of years, that remains. It maintains the SAIL, the enrichment, elementary enrichment program that we started this year, is part of this proposed draft budget. Our IT programs and enhancements that we talked about are also here. You know, one of the pieces is, although this is our first formal budget number 1, but in reality, as a result of a lot of the different department meetings, some of these topics you've already heard, right, because they were part of those program presentations. The physical wellness high school program, right, the weight room, fitness room access, right, this maintains this. And that recycle, right, our replacement plan in terms of the Chromebooks and smart boards, again, that Dr. Wright mentioned beforehand. Some budget drivers, right, that are out of our control, right? You know, they are increases, right, that we have to contend with, not just us, but other school districts as well. Health insurance increase, they are, we don't know the second half of the year, right? So based on the information that we have received, school districts throughout are projecting an increase of anywhere between 12 and 15%, right? So for us, we accounted for a 2.1 increase in health insurance costs. TRS, the 8.24% increase is about, almost about, 600,000 or so. ERS increase, and the transportation, contract transportation that was mentioned by Mr. Maddie, obviously that's included in there as well, right? I'm just highlighting some of the increases. As we talked about, the in-district transportation lines, right, those have been adjusted, has been reduced, as Mr. Maddie mentioned. Transfer to capital, right? This has been on and off in terms of various different budget years. We are looking to, this current proposed draft includes a transfer to capital to address our PA system at the senior high school. I'm sure Ms. Goebel exactly can attest to. Yes, it is terrible, but separate from that, right, it's a safety issue, right? It really is a priority area that we must address, right, for next year. We're currently, Dr. Wright is helping us with this process. We have various different vendors coming and meeting with us and presenting their proposals. So that would be in a transfer to capital line that we would address the senior high school as a priority. The program component, again, our draft budget, right, currently includes some of the wants and or needs, right, that have been highlighted to the administration team and to our Board of Education, right, throughout all these various different department meetings. It doesn't necessarily mean that this will end, right, that all of it will be included in the final draft, because at the end of the day, our goal will be to establish a balanced budget within our tax levy, not exceeding the tax levy, right? So some of this may change, but as it sits right now, these are some of the program components that I would like to, right, hopefully be able to maintain in there. So from a music department perspective, we have a music department presentation coming up. We have talked about that a number of times. We had a multi-year purchasing plan for music equipment. Our music department chair, shared with all of us a new kind of 3-year plan. We had him relook at that, so we're looking at a year 1 instrument budget of $20,000. Technology department, this was specifically, right, some of the areas that were identified there, $5,400. The library department, $2,500. That was in terms of some of the additional supplies. The SAIL, the Students Accelerated in Learning program that we started this year at the elementary level. In a previous slide, I mentioned continuing that. If you recall, yes, we did add the program from a personnel perspective, but we did not add a budget, right, in terms of materials and supplies. So this proposed draft budget includes a budget line for that program. District-wide field trips. This would be to double the current amount that was initially budgeted for this school year, so that each elementary school, instead of 2,000, would have 4,000, and the senior high school, junior high school, 6,000 each. Right, again, for school district sponsored field trips. Other component areas that we currently have in the draft budget, some of these we don't necessarily have a choice with, right, and some we do. AEDs outside, that's a requirement, right? We will need to build, our Buildings and Grounds Department is working, with Mr. Hanley and Mr. P, right, in terms of athletics. We are required to have AEDs outside. So we have to obviously build a place for them to be housed, and also the AEDs, so that's in this. The alternative senior high school evening program. We talked about some of the instructional technology pieces. The junior high school academic center, right? The next 2 items you'll hear in an upcoming curriculum and instruction presentation meeting, right? Our benchmark elementary reading program, as our board knows, we have been in a multi-year, right, installation or implementation, I should say, right, of our reading program at the elementary level. So this is next year's required programs. And MTSS LinkedIn software program, you'll hear Mr. Payne talk about that during our CNI presentation, specifically looking at, the software program to analyze and house all of our student data and to help us make informed decision with regards to student programming and various different MTSS. So this is all the support services from a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 intervention. But we'll talk more about that during that presentation. Other areas that, again, in our draft program component of the of this budget, senior high school region summer administration. So that's not senior high school summer school, right? That's 3 days to administer Regents exams for students that maybe fail their Regents exams, right, and need to retake it. That's currently there. Summer income and K orientation program that we have done beforehand. This is kind of a tentative number because it is still being worked on. Our student services department is having all their annual review meetings, right, for our students with special needs. Those budget lines, right, are still not finalized per se. Because again, those meetings are happening, right? So by the next meeting, which is a month from now, right, we'll have more solidified kind of tuition and related services budget lines, even though, again, we know that also can quickly change, right, in terms of those needs. But just as an FYI, right, our budget for student services is approximately, $31 million. Professional development, we do not have an increase or particular budget line per se increase, right, in the proposed budget. We added it there because it is an area of need. It is dependent on Title II, right? We use Title II funds to provide professional development for our faculty. If there is a change in what we receive, i.e. all of Title II not being received, right, that would be a major challenge for school districts because we would need to dedicate some funds for professional development. And two in particular that immediately came to mind were the secondary science changes, right, and elementary reading program. So upcoming, so I, in essence, gave you a little prelude, right, of some of the things that we have been talking about, I guess a summary of the main highlights or wants/needs, right, from the various different departments. We do have, on March 10th, we will have a student services mid-year review and proposed budget presentation. That will help us also obviously solidify by that point, right, those budget lines that I referenced in terms of student services. Mr. Payne will provide us with a mid-year, same thing, review and proposed budget. It'll include some of the topics that I just mentioned here. And art and music department, although again, we already know some of their needs, so we've incorporated those in the current draft right now. In addition to that, we have a Board of Education Finance workshop that is scheduled for February 24th. It isn't the same kind of format. It's a workshop, so there are no decisions made. There's no voting happening, right? It is professional development, right, for our team that will focus specifically on the finances, right, and looking at these reports, right. And the nice piece is, and Mr. Pello knows this because we're in the same kind of email thread, that the presenter is including some of our information into his presentation, so it makes it a little bit more relevant because it's using our own numbers as well. And then again, March 10th is our next budget presentation like this, right? That will include more of the solidified program component numbers, which could include all of these areas and could include some of these areas, right? Because at the end of the day, we, by that point, right, I want us to, and we will be, right, much closer to a balanced budget within our tax levy. Because again, that is not, we will not be seeking, right, to go beyond that. I think at one point in one of these slides, we were at about a 3.1 million. I think now we're at like a 2.9 or so million. Again, each day those fluctuate based on, and we have a couple of pending items to adjust, and we'll receive that information in the next couple of weeks. So that is where we're at, team. Any specific priority items, right, that either were presented by a department leader or that, you know, the board has been thinking about that we haven't incorporated as part of this process that you'd like to talk about, you know, we can certainly do so, of course, obviously at any of these meetings. Any questions at this point, Mr. Messeri?
Do we still have the cap on CTE?
Yes.
Is that gonna go up?
Right now, I have it the same. Right, so,
Yeah,
and,
the waiting list, you know, kids that are.
yeah, so I don't know, yet, right? The high school is in the process of developing their schedule, right? When Ms. Galante mentioned beforehand, the team working on kind of sections and things like that. So that's kind of tied with that. I could certainly come back to you to share with you, okay, right, like, you know, we have X number of students on the wait list, right, and we can talk about that. I'm not sure if we could potentially have that for the March one, but maybe, right, because again, the schedules are being created and students are, you know, going through that process now. But I'll certainly circle back around to you to share with the board, here's our number and here are how many students, let's say, we're on our wait list. Let me write that down.
I think there are probably many priorities, especially when you get department specific. You know, everybody presents the priorities very well. The biggest thing to remember for everybody here is that it's 2 months before the state probably gives us an actual number of what we're going to be getting. You know, they say beginning of April, but history will tell you it's probably later. So it's the biggest
Although
variable.
they've been pretty on time, right?
Well,
so
not last year.
hopefully.
Not
last year. Before that, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
What we're hearing, and actually, Mr. Messeri was with me at a meeting on Friday, right? It was a pretty. Let's put it this way. Everyone indicated that they have, in essence, no reason to believe. They felt pretty optimistic that the state aid picture that we have been given, that we will receive an increase. And some have even gone to say, you know, 3% increase, right? But they definitely felt pretty comfortable in there's going to be an increase,
They
right?
said the same thing last year.
It's a common piece, and it's also an election year, right? And all those
Yeah.
other factors into the mix. So I'm going to be optimistic that
That's
that'll
great.
be part of that as well.
They said the same thing to us last year, though,
They,
in the same meeting.
yes, that's correct.
Okay, but
That's correct.
you can be out.
Yes.
Yes. I think a lot of things we've talked about through the course of the year of the wants were already incorporated in here.
Yes.
I know you made the point to say draft, and I think that's a key thing to keep driving it. This is just a draft, because as Ms. Galante mentioned, you know, we have a gap there in reference to.
I was going to ask you to tally how many times I said drafts to make
Yeah,
sure that you were counting
because
it. Yes.
it's because you know it
Yes.
becomes now, this is where we're at, this is what it's going to be, and that's just not the case. Is it safe to say if somebody's going to look at your projected budget number as it is now, it's a snapshot in time, and it is a combination of things you've added back already and wish list items? I mean, would that be the best describer
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
that number?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it evolves every day, right? It's,
Evolves absolutely every day.
I have to
Definitely.
say, some of the lines that you actually saw tonight may have changed already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, understood.
Yeah. So,
We
you
went through
know,
that last year when
Yes.
numbers were
Yep.
being brought up, and they've changed since they were posted on Friday.
Yes.
So, no, I get that.
Yes.
I just think it's you know, everybody, you know, coming from the year we had last year, everybody was, you know, they're gonna see that variance in the revenue versus the projected budget and panic like we are 2 years ago, and I don't think
No.
that's the case.
No.
But I'm just trying to,
No,
And
definitely.
also, it
Take a
also
breath.
driving that the
Yeah.
changes in the lines this year is moving items around to the
Yeah.
proper departments.
Understood.
So
Yeah.
I think that is critical, because a lot of times when I sat down with the budget people and said, like, you know, what line do you pay e-school out of? And it was like, I don't know, I don't see it. It was in a line that they don't have access to. And they should know everything that they have, that they're using, because when that BOCE bills comes in every month, we divvy it up, and we send Dr. Wright his charges, we send transportation their charges, we send building and ground, and just to verify them and sign off on it that, yes, we are using the service, and yes, you can pay it. You know, we don't just pay the bill without getting all that information. So this will make it much easier for them to say, yep, I have this, hey, go ahead, it's good. You know what I'm saying? And that was one of the things that, and it also will be good for the board and the community to be a little bit more transparent. Like the transportation, it's not gonna say contract transportation anymore. It's gonna say transportation out of district, transportation in district, and transportation private and parochial. You should be monitoring all that year to year, especially as you keep going more on contract, just to see where your cost is going up. Is it private and parochial? Is it out of district? And why? You know, things like that. So that is driving the lines changing too all the time. So, but at the end, and when you budget for the following year, and then you start comparing, it'll make more sense.
Yeah, I think it adds some clarity into defining those line items.
Transparency, clarity and transparency for everyone.
Right. It was good to see the music instrument reinstated into the budget. I know it's something we started a couple of years ago, maybe more than a couple, and then we had halted that. So it was good to see that in the enrichment program and some other things. I had some questions there on the earlier slides. I didn't want to interrupt when you were going there, but on like slide 5, where we do the proposed state aid for West Babylon, if you could just give us a refresher on what the private public excess cost aid is, because it does show a decrease.
That's all dependent
go
on
up,
your
but
stacking for all the students that you stack. And by October 1st, I don't think you have to have everyone stacked by then. They suggest that you try to have everyone stacked or stacked to at least the threshold, and then you can always add. But I'm not sure how it's done here in West Babylon. So
What's meant by stacked?
So basically, students with special needs, right?
Oh, okay.
There's a certain threshold, right? And when they exceed the threshold, by threshold I mean in terms of the cost, right, to support the student academically, socially,
Gotcha.
emotionally,
Okay.
or whatnot, right? That gets factored in, and then we receive some aid
It's
as a
formula.
result of that.
So it's formula based?
Right, for
Okay.
students with special needs and the
Okay.
services. But they have to meet a certain threshold. There's certain documents and reports that have to be submitted. So we feel pretty comfortable, right, that when this comes around, then they'll be using the updated numbers and that's going to increase.
Okay. The building aid decrease, is that related to bonds that we no longer have? How is that calculated?
no, projects. So in other words, if you had a project that you did, let's say 15 years ago,
Right,
and you were aided for 15 years, now that project is falling off.
right, it's done.
Done.
Okay, okay.
You don't get any more state aid on it.
In the reserve, on the reserve template, you had the word capital.
Right.
Is that the capital project reserve, or is
That-
the fund
that's your
balance?
That's your capital reserve.
Okay,
That's the reserve that if you want to use the funds in that reserve, you have to put a proposition on your May ballot and tell the community what you're using that money for,
Okay.
and they can vote yes or no on it.
And that's the prelude to a future board meeting.
right.
Where we're going to talk about what priority areas we want to use the capital reserve for, and do we want to add a proposition to expend some of that fund, some of those funds for whatever.
We don't have
purpose you
a
described.
fund balance on this particular sheet appropriated, that we
No.
would use for appropriated. We
Not,
don't have
no,
anything.
not right now.
Because there's no, I know you said there's no intention right now of
Right
using
now.
anything, but we don't know that balance yet. I know that's something we're
Yes,
working on. Okay.
correct, yes.
That's something that's got to be
Yeah.
calculated. I'm almost done, I'm sorry.
No, all good.
Now, take your
Yeah,
time.
My stupid notes. Oh, okay, it was already there. Hold on, I'm on slide 80. Yeah, I think.
I mean, for the record, our Board of Ed Finance Workshop, there are 102 slides.
I saw that, yeah.
I know, yes.
I was going through
not
them,
kidding.
thinking I was
That's
getting to
true.
the end,
It's
and then I
true.
said, I clicked on it to highlight it, and I was like, wow, I have a lot more to go.
Yeah.
And my lunch was over, so. Can you just specify in the curriculum supervision, what, I know it mentions it, what's in
So principal salaries.
account 2010? Okay, all right, that's, okay, gotcha.
No, curriculum 2010 is Mr. Payne's area. That's Mr.
What?
Payne.
Oh, I was on slide 22, thank you. Well, for some reason on mine it's 23, but I don't know why.
So 2010 is curriculum, so that is Mr. Payne's
Oh.
area and all his staff and everything he needs
Okay,
for that.
In reference to the EPC contract, it's the projected, the 1,286,000 number. How does that work again? Because it's supposed to be an inherited savings
Right.
associated. So where is there an offset? Where would we see?
So, the offset is, you'll see the offset a lot of times on your utility line, because you have your solar now.
Okay.
And your last building, I think, just got connected
Okay.
late fall. So actually, when you see your line by line eventually, we have lowered your electric line by about $150,000, because that's what we're anticipating in saving this year.
Okay.
Okay? So next year, with all of them on all year long, your solar, you should even be saving more than that.
Okay.
In your heating units, whatever ventilators they did, you should
Right.
see all that savings in your utility lines, really.
Okay, that's what we'll have
Yeah.
to look at. Yeah.
And the other piece is if, remember the team, right? They do that analysis with Mr. Legidas's office, right? The monthly piece to
They monitor it,
ensure,
yeah.
right,
Yes.
that we
We'll
are
be getting
hitting the
that
mark.
report, yeah.
Exactly, yep.
And then in the, on slide 28, it mentioned possibly the addition of 2 employees for buildings and grounds. I know we talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Right,
It has a figure of $89,000. I'm going to assume that's without benefits.
yes. that's
That
your
is without
salary.
benefits, and just as a background piece, part of that presentation, the request was for 4, right? So the, again, the draft of where we're at, right, is the inclusion of 2, but that does not account for benefits. That's correct, that's salary. Yep.
Okay. And the summer incoming K orientation program, is that something we don't do? Is that totally new?
No, we've been doing it. We used grants, right, for a couple of years. I think we've only been doing it for 2-3 years.
We did it when we got the grants.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So this is to reintroduce it, but now using the general fund.
So what is that, something that happens in August or, I don't,
Yeah,
oh,
summer.
it's been a while. Okay,
Summer, yep.
okay. That's it for me, for right now.
Good. All right, yeah, sure.
When Mr. Panarello presented to us last month,
Mhm.
he had spoke briefly about a lack of interest in some sports right now. You just put it through as it is this year, not taking into account we would have a.
No, so what we did was we rolled over, right, making the assumption of all of those teams running, right? So all of the stipends or whatnot, and then based on enrollment, that's gonna change, right, in terms of each year. And then, as we did this year, right, since we didn't run some of those programs, then we utilized some of those funds to do the fitness center, right, yeah. So we roll over as if we're gonna have all of them, and then we adjust accordingly. Yeah. Questions? Okay, all right.
All right?
Okay, so we
Thank
will
you.
continue,
You're welcome.
obviously,
Well, we
the
clap
next
for,
meeting.
We clap for everyone else.
I mean, all right, thank you, team.
Is it warm in here or is it just the presentation?
It's warm in here.
Okay.
It's warm in here. It's hot in here, yes.
All right. At this time, statement of residence on agenda items only. Any resident wishing to share a statement must state their name, address, and any organization they represent. They can also write this information on an index card and give it to the Assistant Superintendent, Finance and Operations. Comments about individual students or employees are not permitted. Each resident has up to 3 minutes to speak, with a total of 15 minutes allotted. Responses will be given after all statements. Any questions needing further research will be addressed at the next meeting. Nope. Okay. Okay, need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Steve, Patty, all those in favor? Okay, that's everyone.
Skip that.
Okay. That's what I was practicing before, I guess. No policy review today. Old business, follow-up discussion on UPK.
Okay, so just During our February 3rd Board of Education meeting, we provided an update on our UPK program. At that time, we reviewed the state's anticipated increase in UPK funding, the restrictions, right, tied to the use of those funds, and the spacing limitations within our elementary buildings that impact our ability to expand UPK sections for next year. We also discussed that in an effort to proactively look for additional spacing opportunities for UPK families in-house, we established a committee to evaluate space within our high school that could potentially be converted to UPK classrooms. This possibility, right, brings, of course, important considerations, including the financial, right, investment that would be required to retrofit the space. And then there were some broader concerns that were raised during our discussion with regards to housing a UPK program within the high school setting. We fully understand the concerns that were posed during the discussion. I just wanted to see if there was any further conversation needed, right? Is there an interest in our team continuing to investigate the high school as a potential UPK? Because again, that was all it was investigating that possibility. If so, right, then we would of course then dedicate additional time to further analyze the feasibility, the cost, the logistics, and the programmatic, right, implications. As an aside, regardless of the high school option, right, and, you know, obviously the offering of the 2 or 3 or 4 sections in-house, right, we will continue to explore external UPK partnerships and placement opportunities to support our families and, of course, maximize access, right, to the early childhood program of UPK. So that still will happen, right, in terms of us exploring those outside options. In-house, we will offer as many as we're able to based on space, right, that we have at the elementary buildings. Is there any interest in having our team continue to investigate the high school as a potential location?
Are you talking for next year or for 27, 28 when the state may mandate?
For right now, I am just referring to for next year.
For next year.
Just for next year. We'll hold off on the following year for right now. So first step.
I have no interest.
Okay,
The no interests have it.
got it. Do I dare ask the question, is there an interest in the following year, or would you prefer to hold on that conversation?
I think we can hold, but I'm still against the high school option.
Are there more of those? Because then that would completely close that door for us, right? And that's an
Yeah, I mean, as
important
far as the
piece.
high school option is
Right,
concerned,
like,
I think it's, I think
okay
the high
with
school's off the
exploring,
table.
you know, adding additional space in-house, right? I understand definitely that concept. Irregardless of the year or the mandate, not comfortable with the high school.
I'm not comfortable with the high school.
There's over high schools that do it
Yes.
in Rikers Island. I think it's gonna cost us some money
Right.
to get involved with this. I think maybe we get a minor or some kind of a breakdown of what it might cost us to get involved with this project. And then readdress it in a few months or during the summer months maybe.
I honestly don't want to even spend the architect fees. I don't want to spend any
Yeah.
more money on the research or your time and the team's time of committees and meetings. I've seen your calendar. You got a lot more to concentrate on. I personally, for me, if we want to go further, then we have those discussions. We had an almost unanimous decision not to even go further with it. I don't want to spend any more time or money on it. That's just me. Nor do I want to see you and the team do the same thing.
No, understood, and that's why I'm having the conversation, right? Because
Yeah.
if there's an interest, then we'll, you know, the team, the committee will, right, like.
Outside services, great. If somebody comes up with some brainstorm for the junior high, that's a different conversation or something, you know.
Okay.
I just feel like we're gonna spend tens of thousands on drawings and ideas without even chipping away at a piece of concrete.
I was
That's
referring to our B&G department of, let them do some research into the project and see what they come up with, a ballpark figure.
I don't know what, without testing a single thing.
Right.
Like, any number they give us is gonna be lower than the actual cost.
Sure.
I know that, by tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, they can give us a very good, this is my opinion, and please, guys, jump in, it's like, before we even remove a floor tile, that number's gonna go, whatever that number is, it's gonna be higher. And I'm looking at this, I don't know why I'm gonna start. I just feel like so much time went into what they prepped to show us already, and I don't hear anybody saying, I'd still wanna consider it. Why, I don't know why
Understood.
why
We
I'm gonna
definitely
go.
don't need to- yep.
Well, I don't
Yeah,
know,
no, yeah,
he's
yeah.
raising an interesting point,
Yeah, yeah.
trying to get more information, but quite honestly, and I'll just be very straightforward, when I heard that the only buffer between high school students and the pre-K students was gonna be somebody sitting in a hallway,
No, and doorways.
A
That
door-
was part of the,
I'm,
the
I
doorways, yep.
just not, I was kinda like, I can't, we're opening up a can of worms, that's just my feeling.
My concern is the security as well.
You know, we need further guidance from the state, just like the state.
Yeah, there's too
went
many
mandated
variables.
plus thing.
Yeah.
They don't have their finger on the pulse of what's going on with infrastructure. They don't have their finger on the pulse of what's going on with all districts.
Right.
In regards to space. I think what Patty said.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think our team could tackle anything, but whatever that estimate is, and we've all done work even on our own houses.
It's
once
more.
Once you disrupt something, here we go. And it's 50 grand for this test. Oh, that tile there, asbestos test, it's just gonna be hundreds of thousands, we don't have it.
Understood.
But to go with what Anthony says too, if we're gonna use space in the junior high school, business office, something, those tests are gonna have to be.
Of
performed
course, absolutely,
anyway.
yeah. But besides even that aspect, just the high school, from just some things my gut tells me, I just would not wanna go down that avenue, even if the estimate was on the button. For me, I just wouldn't wanna see it.
Okay.
But again, we can go
Okay.
around.
Katie?
I just wanted to add that I think we just are looking at this in just a numbers right now perspective and just thinking about getting your eyes on children developmentally at a young age could change numbers in the future, right? So just thinking from a perspective of having educators seeing children at 4 and 5 years old versus them when they get into kindergarten, we all know the plasticity of the brain and what goes on before age 5, and just I do think that we shouldn't just think right now numbers would be not great when long term you might be making significant changes to a child's education and what that could look like long term for us as a district. So I just don't want to be so closed-minded and thinking in that perspective.
That's fine, yeah.
And just I have read some of the research in terms of that model, and it is kind of wonderful. I know that you have your own opinions on that, but I just don't want to just say that.
Yeah. The variable side of what we're allowed to spend from the state funding.
Sure.
But like, again, before spending all that money, because if the state comes back and says, no, you can't spend the
Yeah,
money
sure,
we've
yeah.
given, well, now we just wasted $30,000 on this fee and that fee, just to see if it can happen. I just feel like we, and it wouldn't happen for next year anyway. I'm not opposed to what you, in reference to what you're saying, but I think it's too early for us to commit when we don't even know how we could use the money,
Sure.
But
I
in
still wouldn't feel
general, the
comfortable
general
buying one.
consensus
Correct,
that
yes.
I'm sensing is no in terms of the high school.
Yeah.
Right, and so, which is fine, and again, we're going to explore all the outside pieces, because we absolutely want to be able to afford, again, and the general gist of all of this is getting children into seats for UVK,
Absolutely.
right? Like, absolutely, right, finding ways to do that. In the absence of additional space, right, it will be 3-4-ish sections at the elementary building, right? And of course, we'll explore the outside pieces, but it could possibly just be that, right? And then 140 people on students on a wait list, right, and 60 in a program, right? It could be that, right, if we don't have the outside pieces, but we will explore internal rocks and, and reach out and do an RFP. We were speaking with Ingram and Smith, right, to explore all those options. So we're good. Like I said, I just wanted to see if there was any interest there, right, then of course, obviously, our team will continue to dive into that. So that's all I had for old business. So thank you for the feedback on that, and we'll obviously again continue to provide update there. New business. I just had an ask question for the board. A number of years ago, I don't remember the exact name of the program, but they did one of the BOCE's programs. They did their graduation here in the PAC, right? I can't think of the specific program, but nonetheless, they're asking if, because their current site kind of fell through, if they can host the Manor Plains BOCES graduation program in our PAC. They reached out to the high school. Mr. O'Leary kind of checked the calendar to see if, it would even be feasible, right? And there are some potential dates that it could be feasible. But it really would be a board ask, especially if they are not, because it would be, the request would be not basically waiving in terms of the facilities usage fee, right, to utilize the PAC. Again, by way of background, just wanted to share with the board that a number of years ago they did, this is probably going back now, because I remember going as Director of Student Services to the graduation, right? Years ago, they did have that okay. So the question is, can Manor Plains BOCES program graduation happen here without the facilities use fees to use the PAC for the graduation?
Will the application, part of this? Will it cost us anything other than fees?
So it would happen on a day, right? The only days that we would offer would be days that the PAC is already open, that the school is open, right? It wouldn't be on a Saturday to incur additional kind of people coming in cost, right?
Technology component, just don't know if they have that.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, but those pieces, right, I would then suggest, right, in terms of obviously if they needed someone to operate kind of any of the tech pieces, that would be a fee, right? This is specifically in terms, like, it wouldn't be for us to incur costs. If they need someone to do something special with the lighting or something like that, they would have to pay for that, those ancillary costs. It would be the use of the actual location.